Hi, this is a quick and dirty vlog update on the first ever MAD Studies group for lived experience practitioners in Birmingham. And this is kind of in response to, we were discussing some papers that Peter Beresford had written, and he asked me before, actually, can you give us a bit of an update afterwards and just let us know how it went? So yeah, that's great. Okay, so spoke to people here at the meeting today. They've added a few little excerpts that I'll stick in a moment, and yeah. So do you know what? Absolutely made up about it. So excited. Like I said, it's the first one, and we had 12 people turn up. Now, considering we'd only really kind of put it in, a week or so ago, and just basically there were some people who I knew were interested in it, so I knew, there'd probably be about maybe 4 or 5 of us there, kind of thing. And then thought, well, let's share it on Twitter and social media, and just see if there's any other people who work in sort of other organisations or areas that are interested in this. And Twitter delivered. So yeah, like I said, we have 12 people from a mix of organisations. We had third sector, private sector, and NHS represented. So good cross section, and people worked in a range of roles as well. So we're looking at people who work from kind of like voluntary through to kind of management levels. We had people who work in lived experience specific roles, or some people worked in other roles that weren't lived experience specific, but were interested in the subject area, or had lived experience. So we had a range of people who were interested, and that was really, really great. So the inspiration behind starting this MAD Studies group is actually came from some conversations with people who worked as I'm going to say lived experience practitioners. What I mean by that is people who use their lived experience within their specific job roles. So we're thinking about roles in mental health where you're using your lived experience of mental health openly within your role. It's kind of within your job description, and you're working from that particular lens. And what we found was a shared need, really, for support in doing the work that we're doing. When I say support, I'm not talking about all vulnerable and off sick all the time, or anything like that. It's just kind of the type of support that you have to deal with the emotional demands of your job. So people who work in other disciplines such as psychology, nursing, will have supervision, and this is something that isn't often there are no real formal models for this when you're working as a lived experience practitioner, whether it's a kind of peer support worker or service user researcher, or whatever area you're working in. So we just identified that actually we kind of needed this, and we're just thinking about ways of doing it. So again, inspiration behind it, I thought quite deeply about sort of coming from internal knowledge of things that have kept me going. I've worked as a lived experience practitioner since 2010. And what I came up with was that things like conversations or being with other people who work within my discipline has been really, really helpful. That has been some of the most supportive conversations or help that I've had. And also the other element as well was knowledge. And I was thinking specifically of the Masters of Science Award that I've done, and a lot of the knowledge that has come from that, and particularly looking at that from a lived experience practitioner lens, and also kind of access to learning about sort of what other academics who work in this discipline have written. And it really, really helps when you look at some of this written down. You realise actually there are people who've thought about this and thought about the the organisational dynamics, or thought about the these particular issues, and you realise that a lot of them are systemic as opposed to personal issues. So it was really, so this is kind of where the idea had sort of come from. So we were looking at 2 articles by Peter Beresford, and the first one was we've chosen it basically because these are very recent things, and it's been trending on Twitter recently. So Peter Beresford has written an article in The Guardian, and also it basically came from off the back of a paper that he'd written, I think it was January this year, well, published January this year. I imagine he wrote it way before then, but anyway, so we decided to look at those. So part of the idea behind this kind of Mad Studies group is the idea of, you know, trying to get this knowledge out there. Now, in reality, you kind of know what happens when you've got this, you know, reading group or something, and one of the barriers to the access of knowledge is actually, you know what, some of us with lived experience, reading a academic paper is not that, it's not that, you know, can't always be done, or, you know, sometimes you're not in the right place, or, you know, your head's not in the right place to take that in. So it's trying to think, well, how are we going to manage this group, or kind of be able to get the best from it. So didn't really want it to be a group where people are sat there in silence reading or being read to. So the model that I've kind of tested tonight was where the paper gets sent out beforehand. People have the option to read it, but also realising that actually a lot of us are going to be like, you know, the naughty homework, the, you know, naughty student not doing your homework, and you know what, that's okay. So the idea was that people could come along, they've got the choice to read it or not read it, but people who have been able to read it would kind of synopsise the paper, and then we'd have a discussion about the themes that have come up. So this is kind of, you know, what piloting tonight. So what I would say, do a bit of feedback on the two papers. That the first one was that, surprise, surprise, the Guardian article, which is nice and short, is one that more people in the group were able to read. You know, it's shorter, it's more accessible, it's in the Guardian, and so we're able to have some conversations around that, and people we're talking about things that they found interesting or that came out from that. So maybe something for people who are writing academic papers to think about. And it's really great that Peter Beresford has done this, is that it's great to pop the paper out there. You know, you want it in a peer-reviewed academic journal and all this kind of shit, you know. you need to get that academic kudos. However, when it comes to actually getting the message out there and getting it disseminated, it's also about looking at how it's communicated in other ways. So this was really excellent that we were able to get this in a you know, a newspaper journal, the newspaper article that people could read, and it was more, you know, that was accessible. And what was great was that this was kind of like a synopsis basically of this. So the good thing was that what I would say about this paper, basically there were 12 of us, so 2 of us had read this paper, and I'm not going to say like I'm some swotty person, but even I like the like I've facilitated the group, and I'm kind of like hands up, I'm kind of in a cafe the afternoon before, kind of reading it and doing a little bit of scribing and a few notes down, because, you know, as a facilitator really I should read it as well. So so yeah, so two of us had read it, so invited the other person who had read the article, who's also an academic who works in academia, to you know, just sort of synopsise whatever you know, she took from it, really, you know. And that was great. And I think what was interesting was that the conversations on the paper were, because there was, you know, there's a lot in this, really. Yeah, there's a lot. So we kind of concentrated on some of the things that have been discussed earlier to develop those a bit more, and those were thinking about contextualising the kind of wider environment, and how the impact that austerity has had on funding for service user-led organisations. So we're talking about that. What was interesting that came out of the group conversations was sometimes it isn't just about austerity or lack of funding. Sometimes those things can be used maybe as a bit of a smokescreen, because sometimes funding does exist, but it's, you know, that can be used as a way of maybe not thinking about things, or yeah, I don't know, very interesting conversation. But anyway, the other thing that we spoke about a bit as well was at the very end there's a bit on Mad Studies, which was very helpful since we were doing a Mad Studies group. And one thing that Peter Beresford had done was to what had he done? Yeah, it gave us like some of the common themes of Mad Studies and what it is. The three things that came out of it that were very good, really, in being able to set a bar for actually what what we're going to be doing, or what we're kind of part of with this, setting this group up, really, is really trying to what do you call it? What's the word? Define what it is. So here we go. So we had three bullet points. The first one was basically that Mad Studies is the idea of kind of divorcing, trying to divorce a little bit, or separate itself from a more simplistic biomedical model, because a lot of the knowledge within mental health is kind of very much kind of steeped within that approach. So it was about kind of including other types of knowledge as well. So you're looking at things like mentions here: sociology, anthropology, social work, cultural studies, feminist queer studies, disability studies, history, everything. So it's kind of like really trying to open the gateways to allow other approaches to come in and be reflected upon. And the second thing that he brought out was the idea of first person or internal knowledge, again being part of the integral to the idea of Mad Studies. So if you work in research or work from a biomedical model, often the idea of kind of trying to ensure that things aren't biased, or to ensure that things are done very scientifically, is kind of held up there as being the ultimate form of knowledge. So researchers are often expected to kind of divorce themselves from the research, or come from a very distant perspective. So what Mad Studies is trying to do is it's kind of finding a way of trying to connect some of that first person knowledge to what is what's being I don't know what you're studying, what am I chatting about anyway. He also that's it, yeah. The other thing as well was that this first person knowledge, although it's called Mad Studies and we're focusing particularly on lived experience, the interesting thing was that this first person knowledge doesn't just have to include lived experience knowledge, as in like mad person knowledge kind of thing. It can also include first person knowledge from people who work within other disciplines as well. So if you're working within psychiatry, psychology, OT, whatever area you work in, it's about bringing some of that reflexive knowledge back into the models that you're working with. So it's the idea that actually it's okay to include yourself and to include those reflections. So what's the third bit? Now I don't even know if I've what's the third one? Oh yeah. I've kind of covered the third one. Yeah, the second one was first person knowledge, and the third bit was that it includes kind of everyone. It doesn't have to be exclusive to mad people. So yeah, so that was it. It was really interesting. What else? What we came up with at the end was that we're going to continue this. That was good, because people turned up, people wanted more, people liked it, people found it helpful, which was great. So we're going to be doing this in Birmingham now on the first Thursday of every month. The venue is to be confirmed, because we love Java Lounge, as in great coffee, and we're kind of downstairs, and that was great. The only problem is that from accessibility wise, and I hang my head in shame here, because you know what, we're talking about this kind of inclusive mad studies idea, and then I was kind of handing some flyers, leaflets out to people, and then there's somebody who was in a wheelchair, which meant that actually they won't be able to get down the stairs for Java Lounge, and I felt really bad, because I thought, failed at the first hurdle. So I'm very sorry to anybody that wasn't able to, come because of mobility issues. I'd hold my hands up to that. The good thing is that through that conversation, it enabled me to think about that as well. So at the moment, again, from conversations been having there, there's been some interest from offering room from University of Birmingham, so it may be that we have it going forward at the university there, or we may choose somewhere else. So at the moment, all I can say is it's going to be every month, Thursday evening, 5 till 6:30. People like that time, and venue to be confirmed. So yeah, please have a look on the website www.pinkskythinking.com, and I will keep that up to date with developments and what have you. So yeah, now over to the some of the people that have fed back, and yeah, that's it.
Hello, this is my first visit to this group, and I was very impressed, and I just said it was good to be part of a grassroots movement that wants to facilitate change in mental health.
I think it's been a privilege to be with such a group of wonderful peers and allies, and I think solidarity is really important to actually create change in the mental health system.
So I found it really interesting to be part of this group today, meet a lot of like-minded people who are passionate about improving the conditions for service users to actually work in the mental health space and to make a difference. I found in particular with Peter Beresford, I liked the way he talked about tokenism, and that service users sometimes are used to rubber stamp decisions that have actually already been made by people in the field that maybe haven't got lived experience. So that's what I'm passionate about, and I think that point sort of really hits the nail on the head.
You see such a good number of people come together this evening to talk about promoting knowledge from personal experience in services, and also to talk about getting more resources for user-led organisations.
Hi, so this is the first MAD Studies group that we've had in Birmingham, and I've been so made up about it because we had 12 people that have attended, and we've had people that have read some of the articles. We've had some absolutely incredible discussions talking about some of the different dynamics and situations that are specific to peer working, and some of the conversations have been really insightful, and it's been interesting to hear the same dynamics mentioned within different organisations, and also actually looking at some of the articles by Peter Beresford and realising actually we have experience of the same things that have been spoken about in academia. So it's the idea really is that we've been able to make that real and have those discussions. And the other thing I'd say as well is that not everyone was actually able to read the papers, but everyone was able to take part in the discussion. So for those of us that were able to read it, we were able to talk about what had what was in the paper, and then that information then got spoken about and shared amongst everybody in the group. So I think it seemed to be really effective, and found it really helpful. Feel so privileged that so many people have turned up, and that it went so well. So massive thank you to everyone that's come, and massive thank you as well to everybody that's interested in this and wants to come to future ones. We're going to have them every week. No, not every week. We're having them every month, once a month, on a Thursday evening, and a venue to be confirmed. But so the next one will be in March. Very welcome, and we'll put the details up on the website. Thank you.